Hi. The most common element of data visualization are tables. The purpose of tables and figures in the documents is to enhance your reader's understanding of the information in the document. That means that you should only include tables and figures that will enhance, that will make it easier, better for your uh, consumer to understand the data. Tables are any graphic that uses a row and column structure to organize the information. There's some important elements that you have to consider in a table. You have to be mindful of including that documentation. That is the source. Where is the data coming from? When your boss will see the table, she might wonder where is the information coming from. So make sure that you include source information systems from sales, for example. Another element is integrity and independence. We're all short of time. So when we browse a report and we take a look at the figures and the tables, we have to be able to make sense of them without reading the whole document. So each table must be intelligent without reference to the text. Organization. All the tables and figures that you include must be numbered. Table 1, Table 2, Table 3, sequentially. And finally, consistency. If you use abbreviations and decimals, first, you have to include the explanation of the abbreviations. And consistency in decimals refer to the fact that if you use no decimals, all your document should have no decimals. If you use one decimal all across the document, or 2 decimals, if so. Most of the time, we use 2 decimals. In APA, there are some very important elements of a table. Now, I know that most of the time, our tables do not follow APA format. Most of the time, our reports to our bosses, peers at work, they do not follow APA format, but in your program, we do ask you to follow APA format. First, the title. Each table must have a clear and concise title. The title should be written in italics. It should be below the table number, and there must be a blank line between the number and the title. Headings, all columns must have clear and brief headings, written in sentence case and using singular language. That is, that instead of items, you will write item. The body is the main part of the table. It includes all the reported information organized in cells. Entries should be centered and in sentence case. Also, numbers should be expressed to a consistent number of decimal places, as I mentioned before. The notes are used to provide additional information about the table. Also, if you use abbreviations, you would describe them in the notes. And finally, borders. When we create tables in Excel puts a border around every cell. However, you should not use vertical borders and you should not use borders around each cell. This is an example of a table in APA format. As you can see, we have table 1, numbered, the title, social demographic characteristics of participants at baseline is in italics, and then we have the headings that explain what each column and row refers about. At the bottom, we have notes. In this case, we explain how many participants we used. And also, it includes an additional explanation about the children. It says children A, and the note says reflects the number and percentage of participants answering yes to this question. Regarding effective design techniques of tables, there is something called data ink ratio, and it measures the proportion of what Tuft means it calls data ink. Ideally, we would only use the ink that is necessary to convey the meaning of the data to the audience. And the non-data ink refers to the ink used in a table or a chart that serves no useful purpose. That we should remove. In this example, directly from Excel, we would see every cell has a border. That is not necessary. As you can see in this example, this is better. We have reduced the data ink ratio. So it reads a little bit clearer. It's easier on the eye. On the textbook, you're going to find different types of tables. Design A, B, C, and D. These 4 tables, they have the same data, but design A uses bolded borders. So it's a bit heavy. Design B, same information, the borders are not bolded. In design C, the user removes some of the borders and it's a little bit easier. But ideally, we would use design D, a design that helps your reader read better the data. So we would go like 3 months and then finally grab our attention down to total profit. Now let's take a look at pivot tables. Pivot tables are very useful and they're used in Excel to create custom summaries and charts of key information in the data. We use pivot tables because it allows the user to play with the data without messing the data. Very important. We're going to do a short practice, but the best way to learn about pivot tables is to experiment with them. You're going to open sales transactions. And we're going to go to insert. And when you click on insert, you're going to see the menu opening up the options of pivot table and recommend pivot tables. In pivot tables, if you create one, it's going to not use a recommended one, it's going to give you the pivot table fields. Every column that you have in your data set is going to be displayed here under pivot table fields. And then you can choose which ones you want to use as row, columns, and values and filters. I'll show you that. So we're going to open our data set and create a pivot table. And initially, we're going to drag the regions field into rows and the amount into values. Let's take a look. Again, we open transactions. This is our baseline. We go to insert. And we have pivot tables and recommended pivot tables. Click on pivot tables, and Excel is going to ask you, what is the range? Automatically, it's going to identify the range for you. So most of the time, we do not have to touch this. And then we're going to select new worksheet. This is very important, again, not to match the table. We want a new worksheet so we can play with the data set. We have it. Right now, it's blank. Let's take a look at regions. You can either drag the field yourself down to rows, but also if you just select it, Excel is going to make some assumptions of how the data will be better displayed. I select the region, and I'm going to select amount. You see, Excel then put in rows region and in values sum of amount. In the labels, you can change it to region, and we're going to change this one to revenue. Notice that it just places the numbers. If you want to format it, you would format it just like you would do any other table. Let's say the dollar signs. Let's see what else can we do with the pivot tables. So we have region in rows and some of amount in values. What if we want more information? We want more detail about revenue. Let's say that we want to know what is the product composition of the revenue. So we would select product and guide it into columns. And it's going to give us the information of the revenue created by book sales and DVD sales. We could also drag product into rows instead of columns. It just portrays a different layout, and it depends what serves your purpose better. Let's take a look. So let's look for product in our pivot table fields. If we just click on it, Excel is going to place it in regions. But let's say that we don't like it. So we just drag it to columns. There is another function in pivot tables called the filter. When you bring the payment into filter, what it's going to do is going to allow the user to select what kind of information she's going to see based on the payment type. Let's see. We're going to drag payment into filters. And it's going to appear in the first cell of the data set. So here, our user can click, by default, it's all, credit, click OK. And now we're seeing the revenue created by book and DVDs based on credit sales, based on PayPal, to, or now when we drag the amount of revenue into values, Excel assumed that we wanted it to be added. By default, we have sum of amount, but we can also count. And when we count, then we can do percentages. So in values, you can select, you can leave the sum as it is by default. You can select count, average, maximum, minimum, and others. And also, you will be able to select how do you want the value to be shown. You want numbers or you want percentage? Right now we're in the PowerPoint and we have count of amount. I'll show you how to do it, how to change it in a little bit. You see, we have, instead of revenue, now we have the count of the transactions. And the count we can portray as the number, or if we select show value as, we can select percentage of grand total. It has many other options. So now we have it in percentages. Let's so in our spreadsheet, we have revenue, but we don't want the sum, we want count. So we click on value field settings, and instead of sum, we select count. I'm going to go down to show you the many other options that you have. So I'm going to select count and click OK. Now, because we changed the fields before to dollar signs, we have to be mindful of removing, because these are no longer speaking to us in revenues. What do we want to see? Percentages. We go back to value field settings and select show value as. Right now, by default, it would say no calculation, but we can say percentage of grand total, percentage of column total, row total. And there you have it. What else do we have? To help our user make better decisions, make it easier for them, we have the option of slicers. It's like a filter, but it's more visual. So we can select, create a slicer so that the user can select payment, credit or PayPal. Same way that we did before when the filter was placed in cell A1. where insert, and you see slicer. Excel is going to ask you what, which field do you want to be sliced? So we can select, let's say, payment. We can also select any other region, customer ID, source amount. I'm going to select source. We'll have to move it a little bit to clean the pivot table. And now when I select credit, notice how my A1 cell where it had payment, my filter changed to credit. You know that it's selected because it's in blue. If I click PayPal, it changes. And if I want it removed, I'll click on the little funnel with the X on it. If we want to see credit and email, see how it changes the numbers here. Now this way, it acts the same way as the filter, but it's a little bit more visual. And finally, what about the recommended pivot tables and recommended charts? As I showed you at the beginning, we have, when we click on insert, Excel gives us the opportunity to select our own, create our own pivot table or recommended pivot tables. It also allows us to create graphs. If I go to sales transactions, our first data set, and I click on insert and recommended pivot tables, Excel is going to give me what it considers a good chunk of information. So I'm going to select the default for now. It creates the same table that we did. We can also do recommended charts. I'm going to select the first one, the cluster column. Now notice that the chart that we created also has that filter, which is very convenient for the user. The good thing about the pivot tables is that it allows the user to play with the data without touching any. So you can feel safe that your data is not going to be changed at all. Thank you.